Hi and welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how to make a wonderful little Christmas stocking. It's just a very cute little stocking, very simple to make. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can create this stocking. There is a PDF, it's a free PDF that's attached in the description box, so make sure you grab that. You can also find this PDF out on my website, quiltingwithlori.com, and go to my store and then go under the PDFs and you'll find it there. So this little stocking is a lined stocking, and I'll show you how you can do that. I did not include batting in this one. You certainly can do that. Do some fun quilting on this. I'm going to show you how to make it just using scraps of fabric, but I'm also going to show you how you can take the cuff of this stocking and use your crumbs and make a crumb stocking cuff if you'd like to do that as well. So let's see how this is done. On the table here I have the little stocking. I also have the PDF. This is in the description box below the video here in YouTube, or you can go out onto my website quiltingwithlori.com and go to my store or my shop and go down to the PDFs, and this will be one of the free PDFs that you'll see there that you can download. So either way you can grab that. So make sure you do that. The instructions tell you all of the different scrap sizes you'll need in the instructions here, which I'll be taking you through step by step. So what I did first of all is I took a template plastic and I traced this pattern onto that. So that's what I'm using to make all of my stockings. It's durable, and I'll have it, and I'll probably just tape it to the back of this so that I'll have it for future, put it in a sleeve. But I'm going to cut two, in fact. I guess it's right here. I have two of the lining, and for the lining I simply used, I'm a garment sewer as well, and I have this rayon polyester type lining. It's a slick lining, and I'm just using that. You can use cotton, you can use whatever you want, but it's a nice soft, slick rayon polyester type lining, and that's what I'm using. I've got two cut out of the stocking element there, and I have two of my Christmas print cotton that I'm going to be using for the stocking. So I have a total of 4 of those. I also have the cuff. It's 10.5 by 6. And once we sew it together, we'll first sew the short side and then we'll flip it right side out so that we'll have a cuff. The raw edges will be on one side, and then we'll put it inside here and sew it around this. Now, if you do want to have your stocking to be quilted, you can simply, before you cut it out, just simply quilt it with batting and then cut out. I would probably just put the quilting and the batting under the quilting cotton and go ahead and get it quilted, cut it out, and then you're ready to put the lining, and we'll put the stocking together. So let's do the plain stocking first, and then I'm going to share with you how you can make the cuff a crumb quilted cuff. So we'll see that next. So the first thing I'm going to do, I've actually pinned these together because it's very slick and it moves around. I am simply going to sew, let me get something here. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way around this foot there on the stocking. I'm leaving the top open, 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. I'm going to sew that first, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the quilting cotton here. I'm going to put this right sides together. For this fabric it didn't matter, you know, right or wrong sides at all. It looks the same either direction. So here we go. I want to make sure everything is lined up. And then I'll put some pins in there so nothing moves. And again, I will stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, back stitching at the top here, leaving this top of this stocking open. I'll do that and bring it back to the table. Both stockings have been sewn. This one is finished, and for the lining we can just leave it as it is. For the quilting cotton here, what I have done is I've gone ahead and done a little snip in this corner right here just to allow the fabric, the seam allowance to release a little bit. Make sure you don't snip into the stitching, but I just went ahead and did some clipping there so that it will turn easier. And we are going to turn this stocking, the quilting cotton side, right side out. I'm going to take this to the iron and push out all of my seam allowances and press this very nicely. So I'm going to go do that and I'll bring it right back. I've turned and pressed the stocking here, and now I'm going to put the lining inside, and I'm going to simply leave these raw edges out here and place this in here just as it is, and I'll show you why here in a minute. We want the nice finished edges to be what we see when we look down inside the stocking, and that will allow that to be accomplished. Here, let me see if I can get it all. I'm pushing the toe down into the toe, pushing the heel down into the heel. And then I want to make sure that the seam allowances match up. All right, so I have the stocking lining down inside there. You'll see the finished seam allowance on that side and the finished seam allowance there. So the wrong sides are facing one another. And what I'm going to do at this point is take this to the sewing machine, and I'm simply going to baste around the top edge, this raw edge. I'm going to baste it together with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance using a long stitch, a basting stitch. I will do that and I'll bring it right back. All right, I have basted the lining to the stocking at the top using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance there, and there it is. It's all basted and ready to go. So he is ready now for the cuff. And for the cuff, we're going to take the 10.5 by 6 inch wide piece of fabric, and we're going to put it right sides together, and we're going to sew probably a 1/2 inch is what we're going to sew here in our seam allowance. I did finish my seam allowance at about a 1/2 inch. It all depends on how wide your stocking ended up being. You might have to make some adjustments there, but mine's about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And now I'm going to flip it right sides out and fold it lengthwise for my cuff. So all of the raw edges are right down here. Those are all my raw edges. And I'm going to finger press it here. Here is my seam allowance there. And I'm simply going to take this cuff and put it inside the stocking, like that. Trying to get between the, here we go. And then I'm going to pin it, and I'm actually going to go ahead and stitch, just like I did before with the basting, but this time I'm going to stitch all the way around using a normal 2.5 inch stitch length, and then when that's done, I'm going to flip the cuff out so that it's on the outside of the stocking. So let me go ahead and stitch all the way around, 1/4 of an inch down, seam allowance, regular stitch, and I'll bring it right back. So my cuff has been stitched with a regular stitch, 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I'm pulling the cuff out. I'm going to flip it down over the top of the sock or the stocking, and just kind of making some adjustments there. And there we go. We have our stocking. Let me push my toe down. The lining of the toe needed to be put in there. There we go. Is that cute? And then you can finish with some ribbon, which you can put on the front here. You can also put a ribbon or twine, whatever, and stitch on the edge of it. Put a hanger, because you'll need something to hang it with. But it's just adorable, just a cute little stocking. It's finished on the inside. I'm going to take this and press it at the iron. But they're very quick, very fast to make. Now let's say you want to use your crumb fabric and make a cuff with your crumbs. And so what I have done is I've just taken some muslin, and I've actually cut along a 10.5 by 3.5 inch wide piece of muslin here, and I'm going to crumb this part, and then I'm going to stitch it to the bottom or the lining, and it will become one piece of fabric, and then we'll do the same process that we did with the other cuff. I'll put this together, sew it up, and we'll flip it on there. You'll see exactly what I mean by that in here in just a minute. But the first thing we're going to have to do is take this, and we can either create crumb fabric by using the muslin as a foundation, or you can do some strip piecing here, or you can simply start creating crumb fabric. So let's first look at this piece of muslin. Let's say we want to use the muslin as our foundation and we just want a strip piece along this to create our cuff. And we can simply start in the center and then find something that you like. This one's not quite long enough. I need to find another one here. This one would be longer. I could place that there, stitch, press it open, and just continue doing this on both sides. Stitch, press it open, and just continue strip piecing along each side of this cuff. And then I would trim it up to 3 inches by 10.5. But if you just want to do nothing but crumb quilting, then you simply start putting together crumbs of fabric in a long piece of, and create a new piece of fabric, basically. You're going to create a piece of fabric that's at least 10.5 inches long by about 3.5 to 4 inches wide. And then you'll trim it down and then you'll add it to your lining so that we can put it together like the cuff was done here for the stocking. So I'm going to go ahead first of all and show you how I'm going to create this as crumb fabric, and then I'll also do it as strip pieced fabric, and you can decide what you'd like to choose. So I've stitched together a number of crumbs to create a piece of fabric that's at least 10.5 inches by 3.5 inches wide. And what I'm going to do is take my rotary ruler and mat here, and I'm simply going to cut this like a rectangle here. All right, I think I want this to be about 3.25 inches there to allow for a seam allowance. Whoops, that didn't work so well. I should probably stand up. There we go. All right, so that's what I have. Now what I'm going to do with this foundation here, this will be the lining. I am going to make this the same as that. I'm going to make this about 3.25 wide, which will give me that seam allowance that I'm going to need. And I'm going to stitch these together to create the cuff. I will have to reduce the length there as well. All right, I have the lining and the front of the cuff trimmed up to the size that I want. I'm going to sew these together to create one piece of fabric. So I'm going to sew this together so that it will look just like that green cuff that we had originally. And then I'm going to sew the short sides together and turn it right side out. Let me go ahead and stitch this, and I'll bring it back and show you what I mean. All right, I've sewn the long seam allowance, so that's been sewn. Now I'm going to put this together, right sides together, and I'm going to sew the short seam allowance. And I'll get that done, then I'm going to bring it back to the table here, and I'm going to flip it right side out and fold it lengthwise. I'll show you. The short side has been sewn with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm flipping it right side out now. Let me kind of finger press all of this. So the lining is on the inside, the right side is there. There we go. And so there is your cuff. It needs to be pressed here. It's kind of coming down there, but this raw edge down here at the bottom is what is going to be sewn inside the stocking. I've pressed that cuff so that it lays nicer now. You could certainly do a basting stitch all the way around that raw edge if you choose to. But what you're going to do is the same thing that you did earlier, I did earlier. We're simply going to put this cuff inside that, let me fold this in out of the way so that you don't see this green cuff here. I want you to pretend that this is ready to go. So we're going to put this cuff inside just like we did before. We're going to match up the seam allowances, etc. So the right side of the cuff is touching the wrong side of the inside of the stocking. We're going to sew 1/4 inch all the way around, and then again we're going to flip it out just like we did with this one so that the right side of the cuff faces the outside. That's the goal. And that's how that can be done. So if you had a light colored stocking, this would be an adorable cuff that you could put on it, or a red stocking or a green stocking. I think more of a plain color or a light color would really accent this adorable cuff. So that's how you make a crumb piece of fabric for a cuff. And then of course, to do the strip piecing, you'll simply do as I had done earlier. You'll start out, I like to start in the center. Some people like to start at the edge and just go all the way across. It doesn't really matter which way you begin, but then just right sides together, press it open, and just continue adding pieces along each side until it's completely covered. And then you have another adorable cuff, and this one would be strip pieced. So this was the cuff that I had made a crumb fabric and created the cuff doing that. This is a cuff where I'm doing some strip piecing, and I'm simply using the muslin as my foundation. I started in the center and I'm working my way out. You can start on either end, but I'm simply adding strips and then pressing them over, and I'll continue adding strips this way, and I had done the same on this side, and until you have it all covered. Then I'm going to trim this up to about 3 1/4 wide by 10 1/2. 3 1/4 because I'm going to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance that is going to be eaten up with this and the lining. And then again, we'll do the same where we add our lining to this other side so we have a complete cuff. We'll sew it together this way. We'll flip it right side out just like this. Then we will tuck this inside the stocking. Sew around the outside edge here, the top edge, and then flip the cuff out, just like the stocking here. Just an adorable way to make this Christmas stocking. So many different ideas for you. I'd love to see what you all put together. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today to learn how to make this simple little Christmas stocking. Don't forget to download your PDF and make a pattern, save that template, and make lots of them. I'd love to see pictures of what you're creating. You can take those pictures and post them on my Facebook group page. Go out to Quilting with Lori and then locate my Scrap Up Your Stash group page and post some photos out there. I'd love to see those. There's so many different fabrics available. You can quilt this, you can use velvet, you can use all kinds of wonderful fabrics that are available. You might have a favorite color theme that you're using for Christmas. These are just some traditional red and greens, and so many different ways you can put it together. So I hope to see what you're creating, and if you do like the content that I provide, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share my videos with your friends and your quilt guilds. That really does help my channel to grow, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So until next time, happy quilting.